Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be back in this group. I've been itching to come back and see you all. This is, like Angie said, and Kate, definitely my favorite group of people to be with. I love talking about communication and all the things that we can do to kind of help support it. And so today I'm just going to be talking about voice preservation, voice banking, and beyond. So um, just a little overview of kind of what I'm going to go through today. First, just give you a little bit of background on Bridging Voice and who we are, kind of what our role is in supporting people, and then really go into some of the details on voice preservation. What does that mean? What are the differences between different options, and how can you do them? I'm going to answer some common questions and concerns we hear about voice preservation, and then talk about ways that you can put that voice to work. Um, Please feel free to interrupt at any time, type questions in the chat, whatever. Otherwise, we have time at the end too, so whatever works for you guys. So, Bridging Voice. Um, Similar to the ALS Association, we are a nonprofit organization. But we are a very small but mighty team. There are 10 of us now. We are a group of speech pathologists, occupational therapists, programmers, and an amazing leader. And we all work together to support people living with ALS with their communication and technology needs. Um, we have supported, the organization started in 2019. And since that time, we have supported over 2,800 people living with ALS in 49 states. We're missing North Dakota, in case you were wondering, and in 21 different countries, although we primarily are based within the United States. Um, and really, what our specialization is in helping people after they get access to a communication device and finding kind of customizations and innovations that'll help support continued use of a communication device. We're not here to replace any services that people have. So we work really closely with clinic speech therapists, wonderful speech therapists like Kate, to make sure that we're supporting people in the best way that we can. We also have webinars and things like that too. So if you're ever interested, you can join our mailing list or check out our YouTube channel. One of the things that we do is we provide services to support ongoing communication, and all of our services are always free and really designed to be the most supportive for each person who needs them. So with that, let's go to voice preservation, which is the whole reason I'm here today. So what is voice preservation? Voice preservation is really this umbrella term that covers different ways of preserving your voice for use on a communication device in the future. And it can include any of kind of the pieces on here, including voice banking, voice cloning, and message banking. Sometimes people do all three, sometimes people do one, and sometimes people don't do any. But what it really is a way of making sure you're maintaining that vocal identity to be used if you do lose. And so voice banking, which is something some of you might be familiar with, is process of creating a synthetic computer approximation of your personal natural voice. And so what does that really mean? It means creating kind of a computerized mimic of your voice. However, because it is being created through a program, always going to sound a little bit robotic. It doesn't have kind of that natural intonation, natural pauses in speech that really make us have our natural identity with our voice. And voice banking can be done through a couple of different ways. The most typical way, and kind of the way that all the voice banking software was designed, is to record a series of sentences that are then taken and broken up into little pieces, into all the individual sounds, and then kind of put back together to create this computerized voice. A lot of times those sentences are really nonsensical. Um, they're very bizarre, but they really are getting at all of the sounds in the English language. You can also create a banked voice using former recordings. There are a couple of services that will do this, and the quality of that can sometimes vary based on the quality of the recordings, the number of recordings, and just their software and kind of how they're able to manipulate the sounds from them. And so, what does voice banking sound like? Um, we have one of my colleagues, Abby, who's a speech pathologist, has banked her voice with every service. And so she did a really great project for us where she recorded her natural voice saying a sentence and then did the same with each one of her banked voices that she's done. And so this is just kind of a sample of what that can sound like, that synthesized voice. So this first one that you'll hear is Abby's natural voice saying the sentence, "The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog."
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
And here is her voice that was banked with a service called Acapella
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
with Apple Personal Voice on her iPhone,
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
and with the Voice Keeper.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
And so you can hear that they each kind of have a different quality. Um, each of them will pick up on different parts of the speech. Each of them will have differences in terms of kind of the naturalness. And all of that is based on the way that the software was designed to create voices. But they all sound a little bit different than that natural voice, which was Abby, including all of that intonation, the speed, all of those pieces. So another piece of voice preservation that's relatively new is called voice cloning. And this kind of falls under that same category as voice preservation or as voice banking, but it includes an AI component. And so that artificial intelligence is the software that's actually going to be continually improving your voice. And what it does is it's able to um, use AI to incorporate things like changes in tone and pitch, and include things like natural pauses. If you include or like in your speech a lot, it'll kind of pepper those in as well. And so these are often a lot more natural sounding than the banked voices, um, but just are a little bit different. And so to create a voice clone, typically you record about 10 to 30 minutes of audio. And that can be a lot of times we encourage people to like read a book or an article, or give yourself a list of questions that you're going to answer, like you're having an interview, a one-sided interview. It's kind of silly, but um, if you still have your voice in place, that can be a great way to get recording. The other way, and more commonly, I would say, is that people use former recordings. And so I've had people use old voicemails that, maybe children or partners or grandchildren have saved on their phone. I've had people use like former speeches from weddings or retirements or any video that you can think of to create kind of this voice clone. And so I'm going to play just a little portion of what a voice clone can sound like. Oh, first, I'm going to talk about where you can make a voice clone. So there are a couple of different companies that will clone voices. A lot of times, this technology actually came out of the idea of wanting to clone like celebrity voices. So a lot of people have wanted to say like, "Ooh, I want to call someone and sound like Sean Connery." And that's where they kind of created this software. A lot of times these companies will advertise it to be used, in creating podcasts or advertisements or things like that. But recently, Bridging Voice partnered with a company called 11 Labs to help them realize that this technology could be used to support people living with ALS. And um, through working together, we're able to offer a free license to get a voice clone through 11 Labs, which basically means you can try it out and you can use it for as long as you like without there being a cost. Typically, the voices have costs associated with them for like how much you're typing per month. And so that's something that's been a really cool development. And so, what does a voice clone sound like? Um, I'm going to play a paragraph that Abby reading just about herself, and then I'll play her 11 Labs voice clone about the same term.
Abigail Abby Marks is a speech language pathologist who has spent her career supporting individuals who use AAC. I'm excited to be a part of the Bridging Voice team, where the priority is finding solutions and ensuring effective communication for all PALs to maintain their autonomy and their voice.
So, that was Abby's natural recording, and here's her 11 Labs voice.
Abigail Abby Marks is a speech language pathologist who has spent her career supporting individuals who use AAC. I am excited to be part of the Bridging Voice team, where the priority is finding solutions and ensuring effective communication for all PALs to maintain their autonomy and their voice.
And so that's just kind of an example of how those voices might differ from like bank voice. Um, I think one of the great things about the voice clone is it is really natural sounding. A lot of people feel like it sounds more like them. However, one of the drawbacks is because the voice clone uses AI, in order to use the voice continually, you do have to have a connection to Wi-Fi. And so oftentimes I have people create both so that if for some reason the internet's down, you still have a voice that sounds like you in that bank voice. But if you're using it for, um, you do have Wi-Fi and have that access, it can be nice to have that cloned voice too. And so that third piece of voice preservation is message banking. And what message banking is really recording specific personal messages to capture all qualities of your voice. And what this looks like is instead of, having these random sentences or reading out of a book to record, you're picking what messages you really want to save and have played on a communication device. While bank voice and the cloned voice can be used to type any message you would want to, um, message banking is really going to um, put on buttons just one recording. So you push the button and it's going to play a recording. It's going to be more limited in that you can't possibly record everything that you want to say, but you can record the really important things and make sure you're capturing all qualities of your voice for that. And so you can record kind of as many sentences as you like. And there are ways to do it on a Zoom recorder, kind of a handheld recorder, your phone, or even on your computer using a free software like Audacity. And so what does message banking sound like? We have a couple, again, examples of Abby doing her, 11 Labs voice saying go Badgers, and then what her bank message might sound like. So here's her 11 Labs.
Go Badgers!
Really enthusiastic. And this is her actual recording.
Go Badgers!
And so you can hear how it's a little bit different and why you might want to capture kind of that piece. Again, here's I love you.
I love you.
A little bit flat, even in the voice clone, versus Abby's voice.
I love you.
This captures it in a little bit different way. And so let's get into some of those like common questions and concerns that we hear about the voice preservation process. And I think that the truth is that a lot of people are hesitant to start it because it can be really overwhelming and emotional. And that's just a reality. It is. You are facing this idea that your voice might not remain strong or that it might not be your specific voice. And that's really hard to think about because our voice is such a huge part of our identity as people. And so I think it's okay to acknowledge that and really sit with that when you're doing the different pieces of this process and know that being able to bank your voice is really giving yourself um, that backup plan of having something that will still preserve that identity if maybe that speech is lost. And so, kind of like I mentioned, why should I bank my voice or clone my voice or do message banking? And I think the reality is because it does give you that ability to maintain a sense of self. Um, it can be hard when, you're using different pieces of technology and you're communicating in a way that just is different than what you're used to. And so using things like your voice can really help to maintain some normalcy and what else maybe feels really not normal. Um, it can also be really important when you're thinking about autonomy and familiarity in relationships. A lot of times, there's been, comments from people who are living with ALS or their caregivers that, medical professionals will start talking to their spouse or talking to their caregiver instead of to them. And maintaining that voice can help people really remind their medical professionals that, hey, it's still me. I'm still talking and, I'm still have control over my care. And so I think that's an important piece. The other thing that's been shown is that similar to how a, a baby's like stress um, can be minimized by the sound of their mother's voice, there's actually been studies that have shown that caregivers and others have also noticed that same effect of having a reduced amount of stress by being able to hear their loved one's voice. And so being able to preserve that can be a really great gift, not only to yourself, your caregivers as well. One of the other big questions that we get a lot of times is what could I bank? Particularly in the message banking um, kind of realm, it's hard to know, I don't know, what messages are important to me. What do I need to capture in my voice? And I think one of the things that's helpful is to think about what messages are the most meaningful to you and what messages really matter where how you say it in your voice matters. And so a lot of times I think about that like, are there specific quotes from movies or TV shows, or are there just family things that you have to say it in a certain way with a certain tone of voice in order for it to really matter? You can also think about doing some other pieces for more of a lasting legacy. I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't really want to do messages, but I want to have something that my grandkids can have and hear my voice. And doing things like recording audiobooks, using um, Hallmark books have recordable books, or you can do it with an app called Pictello that allows you to take pictures and to record audio. Or even this little cute guy up here is called a Tony box. You can get your own personal recordable ones, and it'll allow you to record stories that can be used then forever. The other important thing about message banking is that it can increase how quickly you're able to communicate. So typing out every message is going to be slow because typing is always going to be slower than speaking, just is. Um, and so having some of those messages recorded can help make it a little bit faster too. One of the things I hear a lot is that I want to do voice banking, but I've heard that it's hard or overwhelming, or expensive to do. And I think that um, it can be, except for there's a lot of support. Um, Within the ALS Association, there are fabulous people who will help support you, including Kate, voice banking extraordinaire, who can help support you through that. Um, there's also, if you don't have someone at your local ALS association, Team Gleason is a national nonprofit that will connect you with the team at Boston Children's Hospital to help do voice and message banking, and the cost is free. Um, there's no cost to do it for somebody living with ALS. Team Gleason has grants that will support people in getting their voice created. And so that's a really, I think, just important piece to know, that you can get through this, and that it's something that you can do with support. And so, how do you get started with doing voice banking? Um, Typically, if you're doing it with support from your ALS association or from Team Gleason, they'll talk to you about the different options for voice banking through different companies like Acapella, the Voice Keeper, and Speak Unique, and why you might choose one over the other. You can also do it on your computer with a headset microphone. You can do it on your phone, on an iPhone or an iPad. You can do a personal voice, or you can do it using the Voice Keeper app. So there are lots of different ways that you are able to do those recordings. Um, One of the things that I often get asked too is it too late for me? And the answer is no, it's never too late. If you have recordings of your voice, then there's always a way to do that through some of the companies. So Speak Unique will do a voice creation out of old recordings. So will the Voice Keeper. And you can always do an 11 Labs voice clone. So 11 Labs has two different versions of voice clones, kind of technical and not super important. But I think the piece that you need to know is I've had a person who literally had 30 seconds of their voice. That was it. And we were able to make an instant voice clone that sounds like. Um, so I think that there's always options. If you don't have any recordings, that's okay too. If you've had changes in your voice, you can use a voice repair service. One of the companies does that, as well as voice donors. So sometimes people will ask, like brother or a sister or a child, anybody who sounds familiar to them or similar to them, to do the recordings for them. And then you can do a voice as well. And so there's always options, even if you're noticing changes in your speech. Message banking, how do you get started? Again, something that you can get support from with your ALS association or Team Gleason team. But there's some really great ways to do it. You can do it for free on your computer or laptop using a free software called Audacity. I would recommend using a headset microphone to do it. But that's something that you can do easily and quickly. There's also ways you can do it on your smartphone. So Apple has the AVRX app. Android has the audio recorder, voice recorder app. Um, there are ways to do it both, get it in the right format, this wave format that we recommend, and really allows you to just get those messages done. You can also store all those messages then on a site called mymessagebanking.com, that when you're ready to put them onto a communication device, it's easy to get them in. And that there's a place that you can find them too, who should need them. Another thing that I wanted to include on here, and I know Kate has fantastic resources as well, are different things for what messages should I do, what messages should I record. And this is one that I can share as well. Just gives ideas of different topics, different categories of messages that you might like to record. And so I think all of that is important. How do I record my voice? All of those pieces. But I think the biggest thing is what can you do with your voice once you have it? And there are a number of different ways that you can use it, besides just, typical conversation. So you can use it to speak with your family. You can use it to make phone calls. Um, but really it's those everyday things that are important to use them for. And so I want to share a video here of April, who is one of our clients who made an 11 Labs voice and how she uses it.
I'm Bill. I'm April's husband and caregiver. We've been together for 10 years, married for 8. It was just about 2 years ago she was diagnosed with end-stage ALS, which really rocked our world.
We thought my original voice was so great until we heard 11 Labs. I cried the first time I heard it because it was actually my voice again. Once upon a time, in a small town called Karateeville, there lived 3 siblings named Riker, Ava, and Jax. They were all students at the prestigious...
It was something that I never thought we would hear.
Riker, Ava, and Jax found themselves facing a formidable opponent.
It kind of brings back a piece of her that, for lack of a better term, has died, because it was something that we never thought would come back, and thanks to Bridging Voice and 11 Labs, it was resurrected, and it means the world to us.
So I think what's really cool about that is that um, what April does is really interesting. She uses her 11 Labs voice, but she also uses a cool program that we've created that uses ChatGPT, where she programs in a couple of details about her kids. So Riker, Ava, and I forget her last other son's name, but she'll program that in and say, create a story about them, and then it'll spit out that story about Karateeville, and she's able to still, make up stories and participate in bedtime routine by doing those things. And so I think what's great about having a voice and having a communication system that works for you is that it allows you to do those everyday things that maybe sometimes we take for granted. The other thing that a voice can be used for is for other special occasions or for more um, advocacy, podcasts, public speaking. And so I think that's something that's important to look at too. And what you'll see in this video is Representative Wexton, who recently used her voice and a communication device when she was speaking at a public hearing, and kind of how she is able to use them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Do we have any Virginians in the House?
I rise today in support of my legislation.
A politician who can't do public speaking will be a former politician before too long.
My campaign is not about gloom and doom.
Are you aware of that letter?
Last year I was diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, or PSP. It's basically Parkinson's on steroids, and I don't recommend it.
I didn't anticipate being at the forefront of a debate over the future of AI. I also hadn't expected to make history by using a text-to-speech device on the House floor. But this AI voice model has given me a new opportunity to have my voice heard, and it reminds listeners that I'm still me.
To be able to hear someone's voice in that way is just game changing. There may be ways to make this more of a reality for people living with PSP than we could have ever.
So while she has a kind of a different condition than ALS, I think it shows too just some different ways that you can use that voice. So you can use it. We actually have somebody who's going to be using their bank voice along with their clone voice to give a TED Talk in the spring. And so there's lots of ways that you can use these voices to really make sure that you're still heard and that communication is still at the forefront. One thing, I think that's the end of my presentation, actually.
Thank you.
But one thing I'm realizing is I didn't tell you how to make a voice clone. How silly. If you want to make a voice clone, what you do is you go to the address that I have listed in the presentation for 11 Labs and you apply, and they send you a code, and then you can either upload old recordings of your voice or you can make new recordings. And that's as easy as it is. So I'll stop there. Information in case you want any, but